They were laughing at me. My own family, sitting around that Christmas table, mocking my startup like it was some pathetic joke I'd been playing at for too long. My sister's smirk. My father's disappointed sigh. The whispers about poor Marina and her little delusions of grandeur. I'd spent my entire life being told I was ordinary. And that night, surrounded by their success and my humiliation, I almost believed them. Then the door opened, and Catherine Monroe walked in, the billionaire investor, looking straight at me. What she said next didn't just change my business, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my past. I'm 39 years old, and my name is Marina Cole, though if you asked anyone from my childhood, they'd still call me Minnie Cole. Like I never quite made it past being that small. Forgettable girl who learned to take up as little space as possible. I live just outside Seattle now with my daughter Ava, who's 20 and everything. I wasn't at her age confident, loud, unapologetic. But this story, the one that changed everything, didn't start at that Christmas party last year when they all laughed at me. It didn't start with my startup, or the failure everyone was so eager to discuss over champagne and shrimp cocktails. It started decades ago, in a house where wanting more was treated like a sickness you needed to hide. I grew up in Tacoma, in one of those neighborhoods where everyone knew everyone's business and kept score. My parents, Diana and Frank Cole, ran our home like a small dictatorship, with very clear rules about who got to dream and who didn't. My mother had been an accountant once, actually good at it from what I heard. But she quit when she married my father. Just stopped. Focused on the family, she'd say, like it was some noble sacrifice, instead of what it really was giving up. My father owned a hardware store on Pine Street, and he ran it like he was managing a Fortune 500 company. Every transaction mattered. Every penny counted. Every failure was noted and filed away for future reference. My older sister Rebecca was the golden child. Beauty pageants, starting at age 5. Scholarships, the kind of grades that got mentioned at church. She had this way of moving through rooms like she owned them. And maybe she did. Then there was Hannah, my cousin, who lived with us after her parents' messy divorce. Hannah was quieter than Rebecca, but just as perfect in her own way, obedient. Grateful, never asking for too much. And then there was Elias Carter, the boy from 3 houses down with the messy brown hair and the collection of National Geographic magazines. Elias was the first person who ever looked at me like I had something worth paying attention to. He'd sit with me on his porch and talk about space and ocean trenches and all these impossible things. And he'd say, "You're smart, Minnie. You could figure this stuff out." Nobody else said things like that to me. I learned early that in my family, there were people who got to want things and people who didn't. Rebecca got to want things. She wanted to be homecoming queen, and she was. She wanted to go to University of Washington, and she did. My parents celebrated every achievement like it was evidence of their superior parenting. But when I brought home a perfect score on a math test in 5th grade, my mother glanced at it and said, "Well, math isn't everything, Marina. Don't get a big head." When I told my father I wanted to take the advanced science class in middle school, he laughed and said, "Let's focus on what you're actually good at first." I kept waiting to find out what that was. The worst part wasn't the dismissal. It was how they made it sound reasonable, like they were protecting me from inevitable disappointment. "Cole women don't go chasing after things," my mother would say while folding laundry or scrubbing dishes. "We're practical. We're steady." As if ambition was something reckless, something that happened to other kinds of families. Better families. Chosen families. But here's what I didn't understand then. What took me years to figure out: my parents weren't trying to protect me from failure. They were trying to keep me small enough that I'd never leave. Never question, never become someone they couldn't control. I thought that was the worst thing they did to me. Convincing me I wasn't enough. That my ideas were silly. That wanting more made me ungrateful. I carried that belief like a weight for years. Through high school and community college and my early 20s, when I worked retail jobs and told myself this was fine, this was enough, this was all I deserved. But I was wrong, because when I was 10 years old, on a Tuesday night in December, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet except for the sound of my parents talking in their bedroom. Their voices low and urgent in that way that made you want to listen. I crept down the hallway in my pajamas, my feet silent on the carpet, and I pressed my ear against their door. And I heard my mother say something that would echo in my head every single Christmas for the next 29 years. She said, "We can't let her end up like your sister, Frank. We can't let her think she's special. Look what happened to Catherine, my father's sister." Aunt Catherine, who I'd only met twice, who lived somewhere in California and sent birthday cards with $20 bills inside. Catherine, who my parents never talked about except in whispers, except as a warning. I didn't know what it meant then, but I knew it meant something about me. Something they were afraid of. Something they were trying to stop before it started. It was Christmas Eve, 1985, and I was 10 years old with insomnia and too many questions rattling around in my head. The house smelled like pine and my mother's sugar cookies. That artificial peace that settles over homes during the holidays when everyone's pretending to be happier than they are. I was supposed to be asleep, dreaming about whatever normal 10-year-olds dreamed about. But instead, I was lying in my bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Aunt Catherine and what my mother had said. "We can't let her end up like your sister." What did that even mean? What had Catherine done that was so terrible? Then I heard them again. My parents, their voices coming from behind their bedroom door. Low and tense in that specific way, that meant they were arguing, but trying not to let anyone hear. My father's voice was sharp, controlled. My mother's was higher, anxious. I slipped out of bed, my heart doing that thing where it beats too fast and makes your whole body feel electric. The hallway was dark except for the little nightlight near the bathroom, the one shaped like a seashell that cast weird shadows on the walls. I moved carefully, avoiding the creaky floorboard outside Rebecca's room, pressing myself against the wall like I was in some kind of spy movie. My father said, "Diana, we can't let her think she was meant for more." Just like that, meant for more. Like being meant for something was a curse, a trap, something that needed to be prevented. My mother's response came quick and desperate. "Frank, if she finds out what she could have been, she'll leave us." Just like her. There it was again. Her, Catherine, the ghost in our family that nobody talked about but everyone feared. I pressed my ear harder against the door, barely breathing, and I heard something that made my stomach drop. A drawer being yanked open. The rustle of paper, lots of it. My mother's voice breaking slightly when she said, "Lock it away. She never needs to see this." I ran back to my room before they could open the door. Dove under my covers, squeezed my eyes shut, like that would make me invisible. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it from down the hall. What were they hiding? What was I not supposed to see? I lay there for hours, watching the red numbers on my alarm clock change, listening to the house settle into silence. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed about locked boxes and letters with my name on them burning in a fire I couldn't reach. The next morning was Christmas. Rebecca was up early, already perfect in her red velvet dress, her hair curled just right. Hannah helped my mother in the kitchen, the two of them moving around each other like a choreographed dance. My father sat in his chair reading the newspaper, drinking coffee from his world's best dad mug that nobody had actually bought him. He'd bought it for himself. I remember walking through the living room, past the tree with its color-coordinated ornaments, and seeing something on the hall table, a large manila envelope, thick with whatever was inside, sitting there like it was waiting for someone. I got closer, trying to look casual, and that's when I saw it. The corner of the envelope had writing on it. My name, Marina Cole, in handwriting I didn't recognize. Not my mother's neat print, not my father's aggressive scrawl, someone else's. I reached for it, my fingers inches away, when my father appeared out of nowhere. His hand closed over the envelope before I could touch it. "What are you doing, Marina?" He asked it like I'd been caught stealing. "I just wanted to see what it was," I said. "It has my name on it." He smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. "It's nothing, Minnie, just some paperwork. Boring adult stuff." Then he folded it, creased it, and slipped it into his jacket pocket, the one hanging on the coat rack by the door. I watched that corner with my name disappear into the dark fabric, and something in my chest felt heavy, like I'd lost something I didn't even know I had. 2 days later, Elias was gone. His family moved to North Carolina. His mother explained when mine ran into her at the grocery store. A job opportunity. Very sudden. My mother came home and told me like it was nothing. Like my only real friend vanishing without saying goodbye was just one of those things that happened. I tried calling his house, but the number was disconnected. I wrote him a letter, but it came back marked return to sender. Just like that, the one person who told me I was smart, who made me feel like maybe I could be something, disappeared. The timing felt cruel, intentional, though I didn't understand why until much later. On December 27th, 3 days after Christmas, I came home from Hannah's house where we'd been watching movies and eating leftover pie. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked past the kitchen, past the living room where the tree was starting to drop needles, and I noticed something I'd never seen before. The basement door was open just a crack, and I could hear my mother down there moving things around. I crept closer, listening. The sound of metal scraping, a click, a lock turning. When she came back upstairs, she nearly ran into me, and the look on her face was pure panic for just a second before she composed herself. "What are you doing, Marina?" she asked, and I realized she'd been asking me that a lot lately. "Nothing," I said. "Just looking for you." She brushed past me, but I waited until she was gone. Then I snuck down to the basement. That's when I saw it. The old filing cabinet in the corner, the one that had always been open, where my father kept tax documents and receipts, and all the boring paper trails of adult life, now had a padlock on it. A brand new silver padlock that caught the light from the bare bulb overhead. My mother had never locked anything in our house. We didn't even lock our front door half the time. But now, suddenly, there was something that needed protecting, something that needed to be kept away from me. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew, with the certainty that only children have about these things, that it was connected. The envelope with my name, the conversation I'd overheard Aunt Catherine, the locked cabinet, all of it pieces of something I wasn't allowed to see. Years went by, decades actually. I grew up, moved out, got married to a man named David who seemed safe and steady, the kind of person my parents approved of. We had Ava when I was 19. The marriage lasted 6 years before we both admitted we'd made a mistake. I worked office jobs, retail jobs, anything that paid the bills. I kept my head down. I stayed small, just like I'd been taught. And every Christmas when I went back to that house in Tacoma, I'd look at that basement door and think about what was down there, what they'd locked away, what they didn't want me to find. Then, last year, something happened that brought it all back. My father had a stroke in November. Not a massive one, but enough to scare everyone. Enough to make my mother start talking about downsizing, about selling the house, about how they were getting too old to manage everything. I flew down to help them sort through 50 years of accumulated life, and one afternoon while my mother was at the hospital with my father, I found myself standing in that basement again. And the filing cabinet with the lock was gone. Broken off, actually rusted through after almost 40 years. I pulled open the drawer, and there underneath tax returns from 1984 and warranty cards for appliances we didn't own anymore. Was that envelope? The one from Christmas morning 1985. Still thick, still sealed, still with my name on it, in that unfamiliar handwriting. I opened it right there in the basement, my hands shaking so badly I almost tore the paper. Inside were letters, dozens of them, and photographs, and documents I didn't understand at first. But when I finally pieced it together, when I read every word and looked at every picture and understood what my parents had hidden from me for 13 years, I realized something that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. It wasn't my parents who had lied the most, it was Aunt Catherine, because Catherine wasn't my aunt at all. I was 30 when I had Ava, which means I'd already lived through a decade of convincing myself that small was safe. I'd married Tom Sanders when I was 28, a software engineer who seemed stable and kind until I realized he thought my ideas were adorable little hobbies, like knitting or collecting vintage teacups, cute but unrealistic. He'd say whenever I talked about starting something of my own, about maybe going back to school, about wanting to be more than someone's wife and someone's employee. The marriage lasted 2 years before I packed up Ava and left. And for a long time after that, I just focused on surviving. I worked administrative jobs, customer service positions, anything that paid enough to keep us fed and housed. I typed other people's emails and scheduled other people's meetings and told myself this was fine. This was enough. This was what Cole women did. But then Ava turned 15, and she said something that cracked me open. We were sitting at our tiny kitchen table in our apartment in Kirkland, eating takeout Thai food, and she looked at me with these eyes that were too old for 15 and said, "Mom, stop teaching me to shrink." I blinked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She put down her fork and leaned forward like she was about to say something she'd been holding in for years. "You're always making yourself smaller. You apologize for everything. You have all these ideas and you never do anything with them because you're scared someone will tell you. You're not good enough. And I'm watching you. And I'm learning that this is what women do. We make ourselves small so other people feel comfortable. And I don't want that. I don't want to be that dot." I sat there stunned, feeling like my 15-year-old daughter had just held up a mirror and forced me to look at what I'd become. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "You could build something, Mom. You're smart. You see problems and figure out solutions all the time. And I'd help you. We could do it together." Something shifted in me that night, something I'd kept locked down for decades. Maybe it was hearing my own daughter believe in me when nobody else ever had. Maybe it was realizing that if I didn't change, I'd pass this disease of smallness onto her like some terrible inheritance. Either way, I decided right there that I was done shrinking. So at 47 years old, I founded Bright Nest. It was a home organization tech platform, an app that used AI to help people maximize their living spaces, figure out storage solutions, track household inventory, all the things I'd been doing manually for years because I was good at making small spaces work. I used my savings, maxed out a credit card, taught myself basic coding through YouTube videos and online courses. Ava helped with the design, the user interface, the social media presence. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that mattered, something that was mine. But of course, my family had opinions. Rebecca heard about it through the grapevine and immediately started calling it Missy's little hobby to anyone who'd listen, making sure to emphasize the word little like it was a joke we were all in on. She told people at church, at the country club, at every Cole family gathering. My mother would sigh whenever it came up in conversation. like I'd announced I was joining the circus instead of starting a legitimate business. My father's response was even worse. He said nothing at all, just looked at me with this expression of profound disappointment. Like I'd confirmed every low expectation he'd ever had. The only person outside, Ava, who believed in me, was someone I'd never met. Starting about 6 months after I launched Brightnest, I began receiving emails from an account called Northlight. No profile picture, no real name, just these incredibly detailed messages once a month offering advice, pointing out opportunities, suggesting connections I should make. The first email said, "I've been watching what you're building, Marina. You're onto something real. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Keep going." I had no idea who it was. I tried responding, asking questions, but Northlight never revealed anything personal. Just kept sending guidance, encouragement, technical suggestions that actually worked. It felt like having a guardian angel, or maybe just proof that someone out there saw what I was trying to do and thought it was worth supporting. But Brightnest didn't explode overnight the way startup fairy tales promise. Growth was slow, painfully slow. I'd get 50 users, then 100, then 200, but not the thousands I needed to attract serious investors. Revenue trickled in, but not enough to quit my day job. I worked 16-hour days coding at night after Ava went to bed, pitching to investors who'd look at my age and my lack of tech pedigree and politely pass. And word got out, the way it always does in families like mine, that Marina's little business wasn't exactly setting the world on fire. My father heard about a pitch meeting that went badly and he called me, his voice heavy with that particular satisfaction people get when they've been proven right. Some people are born ordinary. Marina, there's no shame in it. Just accept it and move on to something sensible. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that ordinary was something he'd forced on me, not something I was born to be, but I didn't. I just said, "Okay, Dad," and hung up. Because part of me, that deep buried part that had been trained since childhood, wondered if he was right. Then came the annual Cole family Christmas party. The one my parents threw every year at their house in Tacoma. The one where they invited everyone who'd ever amounted to anything, so they could show off the family's success stories, like trophies on a shelf. This year's guest list was particularly brutal. Rebecca, of course, now the CEO of some marketing firm with a fancy office in Bellevue. Uncle Paul, retired Army colonel, who loved to talk about discipline and earning your place. Hannah, my cousin, who'd married a hedge fund manager and spent most of her time on charity boards and spa weekends. Pastor Daniel from my parents' church, who my mother treated like he had a direct line to God. And Emily Liang, Rebecca's best friend since college, who'd made a career out of knowing everyone's business and sharing it with strategic precision. I almost didn't go. Ava convinced me, said we should face them together, show them I wasn't ashamed of what I was building even if it wasn't a massive success yet. So we drove down on December 3rd, walked into that house that still smelled the same after all these years, and immediately I felt myself getting smaller, the way I always did there. Rebecca hugged me with that fake warmth that meant she was about to say something cutting. Hannah kissed my cheek and asked how I was doing in that tone that implied she already knew the answer was not great. My mother bustled around making sure everyone had drinks, playing the perfect hostess, barely acknowledging me except to say, "Marina, your hair looks different. Did you do something?" Dinner was the usual performance. My father at the head of the table, my mother at the other end. Everyone else arranged by importance. Rebecca held court talking about her company's expansion, how they'd just signed a major client, how she'd been featured in some business magazine. Uncle Paul told war stories. Hannah described her recent trip to Napa. Pastor Daniel blessed the food with a prayer that felt pointed. Something about humility and knowing one's place. I picked at my roasted chicken and tried to be invisible, but then, right before dessert was served, Rebecca turned to me with that smile she'd perfected since childhood. The one that looked sweet but had teeth behind it. "So, Missy," she said, loud enough that everyone stopped talking, "how's that startup going?" Still pretending to be a CEO, the table went quiet. Uncle Paul made this snorting sound into his wine glass. Emily Liang actually laughed, didn't even try to hide it. Pastor Daniel muttered something under his breath that sounded like ambition without blessing leads to ruin. And my mother sighed this dramatic, exhausted sigh, like I was a problem she'd been dealing with for far too long. My father clinked his glass with his knife, getting everyone's attention, and said in that authoritative voice he used for important pronouncements, "Let us pray that Marina returns to her senses before she wastes what little she has left." People laughed. Actual laughter. Like my life was entertainment. Like my attempts to be something more than what they'd decided I could be was a comedy show they were all enjoying together. I felt Ava's hand grab mine under the table. Her nails dug into my palm so hard it hurt. I could feel her shaking with rage, ready to explode at all of them. But I squeezed back, silently begging her not to. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't let them see how much this hurts. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to leave, drive back to Seattle, never come back to this house or these people who'd spent my entire life convincing me I was meant for nothing. And then the front door opened. Not a knock. Just opened. Like whoever was coming in had a key or didn't need permission. Everyone turned toward the sound, confused because we were all here already. Everyone who was supposed to be at this dinner was seated at this table. My father stood up, annoyed. "Who the hell?" he started to say. And then she walked in. Catherine Monroe, tech investor. The Catherine Monroe, the woman whose name appeared in Forbes and TechCrunch and every major business publication in the Pacific Northwest. The woman who'd made $3 billion backing companies that changed industries. She was 71 years old, wearing a black cashmere coat and these elegant boots, her silver hair cut sharp, and she looked around that dining room full of my family like she owned it, and then she looked directly at me. Her eyes, pale blue and piercing, locked onto mine across the table, and she smiled. "Hello, Marina," she said. "I think it's time we finally met in person." She was Catherine Monroe, the billionaire tech investor whose name alone could make or break entire industries. The woman who'd turned 12 startups into unicorns, who sat on boards that shaped the future of technology, who had more money than some small countries, and she was standing in my parents' living room on Christmas Eve, looking at me like she'd been searching for me her entire life. Everyone froze. Rebecca's mouth hung open mid-sentence. Uncle Paul's fork clattered onto his plate. Emily Liang's eyes went so wide I thought they might fall out of her head. My mother's face drained of color until she looked like a ghost, and my father just stared, his wine glass suspended halfway to his mouth, completely motionless. Pastor Daniel made this small choking sound and reached for his water. Hannah gripped the edge of the table like she might fall over. The room had gone from mocking laughter to absolute silence in the space of a heartbeat. My mother found her voice first, barely a whisper. "What is she doing here?" She said it like Catherine was an intruder, a threat, something dangerous that had invaded their carefully controlled world. But Catherine didn't even look at her. She walked across the living room with this calm confidence that made everyone else seem small and frantic by comparison. She didn't stop at Rebecca's chair to congratulate her on her CEO position. She didn't pause to shake Uncle Paul's hand or acknowledge Pastor Daniel's presence. She walked straight through all of them like they were furniture. Obstacles in her path to the only person in the room who mattered. She stopped directly in front of me. "Marina Cole," she said. Not a question, a statement. My father made this horrible choking sound and his wine glass slipped from his hand. Red liquid splashing across the white tablecloth. Emily actually dropped her phone and it hit the hardwood floor with a crack that sounded unnaturally loud in the silence. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just nodded, terrified and confused and feeling like the room was tilting sideways. Catherine's pale blue eyes held mine, and there was something in them. Something that looked almost like relief mixed with anger, mixed with something I couldn't name. "I've been trying to reach you," she said, her voice carrying across the room, even though she wasn't speaking loudly. "I heard you stopped replying to Northlight's emails." My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick. Ava gasped beside me, her hand tightening around mine until my fingers went numb. Northlight, the anonymous mentor who'd been guiding me for months, who'd believed in Bright Nest when nobody else did, who knew exactly what I needed to hear when I was ready to give up. That was Catherine Monroe. Catherine Monroe had been watching my work, supporting my startup, believing in me. My mother stood up so violently her chair crashed backward onto the floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "She was never supposed to know," she shouted, her voice breaking with panic and something that sounded like desperation. Her face was twisted into something I'd never seen before, raw and terrified and furious all at once. Rebecca hissed across the table, her perfect composure shattered. "Dad, you said you deleted those messages. You said she'd never find out." My father's face had gone purple. He slammed his palm on the table hard enough to make the dishes jump. "I was protecting her," he bellowed, spittle flying from his mouth. "She doesn't belong in that world. She never did. She's not built for it. We were saving her from inevitable failure, from humiliation, from becoming just another cautionary tale." His eyes were wild, desperate, like he was trying to convince himself as much as everyone else. Catherine raised one elegant eyebrow and looked at my father with an expression of pure disdain. "Actually," she said softly, dangerously, "she belongs in it more than anyone in this room. More than your golden child Rebecca, who bought her way into a CEO position with family money. More than your war hero brother who peaked at 40 and has been dining out on old stories ever since. More than any of you who've spent decades convincing Marina she was ordinary so you could feel superior." She turned back to me and held out a thick folder, the kind lawyers use for important documents. My hand shook as I took it. The weight of it felt significant, heavy with meaning. I opened it slowly, Ava leaning over my shoulder to see, and inside were papers I didn't understand at first. Legal documents, certificates, letters on official letterheads. And then I saw it, right on top, preserved in a plastic sleeve like something precious. An envelope. The envelope? The one with my name on it from Christmas morning 1985? The one my father had taken from the hall table and hidden in his jacket pocket? Still sealed, still unopened, still containing whatever my parents had decided I wasn't allowed to see. My hands were shaking so badly, Ava had to help me open it. Inside were documents that made the room spin. An acceptance letter into the West Coast Youth Innovation Program. Dated December 1985, addressed to Marina Cole, age 10. Congratulations on your selection, it read. Your test scores and problem-solving assessments place you in the top 1% of applicants nationwide. A sponsorship letter from a mystery benefactor offering to cover all expenses. Travel, housing, everything. A plane ticket to a tech camp in Palo Alto, one way, dated January 5th, 1986. And then, at the bottom, a withdrawal form signed by both my parents, canceling my acceptance, declining the sponsorship, returning the ticket unused. All of it dated the same week. Elias disappeared. The same week his family suddenly moved to North Carolina. The same week my mother put that padlock on the basement filing cabinet, I couldn't breathe. The room was closing in on me. My entire life, the path I'd walked for nearly 40 years, had been decided by two people who were so terrified of who I might become that they'd stolen my future before I even knew I had one. They'd hidden opportunities, deleted messages, removed every ladder I might have used to climb toward something more, and Elias, my only friend. The boy who told me I was smart, who made me believe I could figure things out, had he been accepted to? Had they separated us on purpose? Had they destroyed that friendship because it was dangerous? Because it made me think I could be more than they'd decided I was allowed to be? My throat closed. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people who'd sabotaged me and then mocked me for not achieving more. Catherine placed a hand on my shoulder, and her touch was gentle, grounding, real. Marina, she said, and her voice was full of something I'd never heard directed at me before. Respect. I knew your work the moment I saw it. The way you think about problems, the solutions you create, the elegant simplicity of Brightnest's design. You have a mind that sees patterns other people miss. And I'm here tonight because your startup isn't a failure. It's not even close. It's the foundation of something extraordinary. Brightnest is the future of how people will interact with their living spaces. And I want to invest. I want to give you everything your parents stole from you 39 years ago. The room spun. I looked around at their faces and saw the truth of what they were. My father's face was gray, his mouth working soundlessly like a fish pulled from water. Rebecca looked like she might vomit, all her superiority drained away, replaced by shock and maybe something that looked like shame. Uncle Paul had gone very still and very quiet, suddenly interested in his plate. Hannah was crying silently, tears running down her perfect makeup. Pastor Daniel was staring at my parents like he was seeing them clearly for the first time, his face troubled. Emily Liang had actually backed her chair away from the table, like she wanted to distance herself from what was happening. My mother had collapsed back into her chair, her hands covering her face, making these small broken sounds. Rebecca's voice came out as a whisper, brittle and disbelieving. This can't be real. This is some kind of joke. Marina's not special. She never was. She's just Minnie. She's just our ordinary little Minnie. But her voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly she didn't sound superior anymore. She sounded scared. Like the entire foundation of her identity, the story that she was the chosen one and I was the disappointment, had just been revealed as a lie. Pastor Daniel crossed himself, muttering something under his breath that might have been a prayer or might have been an apology to a God he'd misrepresented. My father's voice came out as a rasp, desperate and pleading. You were meant to be ordinary, Marina. We decided that. We chose that for you. It was for your own good. You couldn't have handled that pressure, that world. You would have failed and been destroyed, and we were protecting you. But even as he said it, I could hear the lie underneath. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves. From losing control, from having a daughter who outgrew them, from facing the reality that they deliberately crippled their own child because her potential terrified them, I stood up. Slowly, every eye in the room followed me. Ava still held my hand, squeezing so hard I could feel my pulse beating against her palm. I looked at my father, at my mother, at Rebecca, and all of them, and I felt something shift inside me. That small, scared part that had been trained to apologize, to shrink, to accept their version of who I was, finally went quiet. I straightened my shoulders. I lifted my chin, and for the first time in 50 years, I didn't make myself smaller. I didn't soften my edges to make them comfortable. I didn't apologize for taking up space. Well, I said, and my voice came out steady and clear and strong. I'm not ordinary. I never was. You just convinced me I was because the truth scared you. But I'm done believing your lies. I'm done pretending to be less so you can feel like more. Catherine wants to invest in my company. In me? In the future you tried to steal? And I'm going to let her. I'm going to build something extraordinary. Not to spite you, but because I finally see you for what you really are. Catherine smiled, and it was fierce and proud. Shall we talk investment? She asked, and it wasn't really a question. I nodded, unable to speak anymore, my throat tight with too many emotions to name. Ava grabbed my other hand, and the three of us walked toward the door, leaving that table full of people who'd spent decades trying to keep me down. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing, my father shouting something I didn't bother listening to. Rebecca's voice high and panicked, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. We stepped outside into the cold December air, and I took my first full breath in what felt like years. The night was clear, stars visible above the suburban streetlights, and everything felt different. Like I'd walked out of one life and into another. Catherine was saying something about numbers and valuations and scale, and Ava was asking questions about the investment process. And I was just standing there feeling like I'd been let out of a cage I didn't even know I was in. Then a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Dark tinted windows. Expensive. The kind of vehicle that meant money or danger or both. It stopped right in front of us, engine running. The back window lowered slowly, revealing a man in the darkness of the interior. And when the streetlight hit his face, I stopped breathing completely. Elias Carter, 39 years older. His hair shot through with gray lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when we were children, but the same person. The boy from 3 houses down who told me I was smart, who disappeared without goodbye when we were 10 years old, who I'd thought about for decades, wondering what happened, where he went. If he ever thought about me, his face was serious, urgent, almost frightened. He leaned forward into the light, and his eyes locked onto mine, and he said 3 words, just 3 words. But they were enough to freeze my blood in my veins and make everything I'd just learned seem like only the beginning of something much darker and deeper than I'd imagined. Marina, he said. They're still watching. Like and subscribe to get more real stories like this.